While the 1970s in Britain are remembered for iconic sitcoms like Porridge, Fawlty Towers and The Good Life, many lesser known comedies have faded from memory. This era of social change brought both new freedoms and controversies reflected in such shows as Now Take My Wife, Casanova 73, Get Some In and Well Anyway. This video revisits these overlooked sitcoms, highlighting their unique context and contributions to British comedy. We begin with a show whose title sums up a decade of frustration for its star. Now Take My Wife ran for one season of 14 episodes on BBC One in 1971. It starred Sheila Hancock and Donald Houston as Claire and Harry Love, a suburban middle-class couple, and their daughter Jenny, played by Led Edmonston. This is not to be confused with Granada's similarly unsuccessful 1979 sitcom Take My Wife, starring cabaret comic Dougie Brown. It was based on the 1971 BBC comedy Playhouse episode Just Harry and Me, in which the comedy focused on the age gap between the middle-aged parents and their teenage daughter. However, the series revolved around the apparently zany situations caused by the mother. Harry, a husband in the tradition of so many sitcom leads, would start each episode by turning directly to the camera and saying, "Now take my wife," though perhaps in an attempt at irreverence. In one episode where the couple was supposed to be very drunk, he delivered the line as, "Now wake my wife." Despite the fact that Hancock's character, Claire, often got the better of her husband during the episodes, the star eventually came to view the show as symptomatic of a wider problem in 60s and 70s TV. In a later Guardian interview, Hancock expressed dissatisfaction with the sort of stereotypical roles she was constantly offered. She said, "I was a little flighty blonde. It's hard to believe now. I was this sort of floozy in the rag trade, and Mr. Digby Darling, and Now Take My Wife. The titles say it all." She grew tired of these nice roles, once complaining, while intoxicated at a party, that she was getting very choosy about what she does because of the quality of her work. Her assessment: "That's because you keep giving me such rubbish." It was short-lived, but luckily only 2 of the 14 episodes are missing from the BBC archives, a forgotten show whose legacy is less about the laughs and more about the cultural shift it helped inspire. Next we have a show that wasn't lost, it was cancelled by controversy. Casanova 73 aired on BBC One in September and October 1973. It was written by the comedy dream team Ray Galton and Alan Simpson, known for Hancock and Steptoe & Son. Casanova 73 followed an episode of Galton and Simpson's comedy The Suit in 1969 for London Weekend Television, in which Leslie Phillips played Howard Butler, a philandering businessman whose clothes are stolen whilst he's in bed at his secretary's home. As with this series, it also featured Jan Holden as his wife. In Casanova 73, Leslie Phillips is now Henry Newhouse, a wealthy public relations executive and a compulsive philanderer who leads a double life, despite being happily married to Carol, played by Jan Holden. The show, specifically written for Phillips, was clearly a product of its time and included his mischievous catchphrase, "Hello." His many relationships inevitably backfire, leading to farcical situations, often involving Phillips hiding in a wardrobe or some such thing. The open-top Mercedes seen in the opening titles was Phillips' own car, from which he surveyed young ladies with ever shorter skirts. Stanley Reynolds in The Times wrote that Phillips' character gets caught in the wrong beds, in all the right comedic places, but it still does not seem to work. The script is either too laborious and slow, or the jokes are too old and feeble. As one DVD reviewer noted, Phillips plays the incorrigible rogue, which is not a particularly likeable character either. The comedy came from the relentless stream of escapades, including plots involving seducing his son's teacher and an exceptionally non-PC idea where he helps his goddaughter practice before her wedding night. But it proved too much for the British public's moral guardians. Mary Whitehouse, the National Viewers and Listeners Association, and others objected to its risque contents. The complaints deluged the BBC, leading to the programme being moved from its primetime 8 o'clock slot to a later 9:25 slot. This decision proved a blessing for the show that replaced it, the quiz show Mastermind, which became a surprise hit. Casanova 73 ran for just 7 episodes, stopped in its prime by protesters. It's an hilarious snapshot of 1970s sexual politics, or, as one reviewer cheekily declared, a release that serves as a final dig at White House and her judgmental cohorts. From controversial sex farce to military nostalgia, we move on to Get Some In. This sitcom was about national service in the Royal Air Force and ran for 34 episodes between 1975 and 1978. The writers were John Esmond and Bob Larby, the team behind The Good Life. Set in 1955, the show followed a hut of recruits, or ERCs, at RAF Skelton. These social misfits, including the teddy boy Jakey Smith, were in constant conflict with the sadistic corporal who runs the hut, the fearsome Corporal Marsh, played by Tony Selby. The Marsh character was an immediate hit, famously introducing himself with the line, "My name is Marsh, that's Bastard." The show gave Robert Lindsay his first major role as Jakey Smith. Many viewers whose fathers did national service in the RAF found it surprisingly realistic, noting that the writers themselves did national service in the RAF in the 1950s. However, the tone was decidedly un-PC. Marsh's homophobic and bigoted attitudes made him one of the most frightening characters to ever appear in a sitcom. As one viewer noted, nowadays it would be frowned on to call someone Puff House week after week on prime time. The show was so popular that when Thames Television announced its cancellation, the News of the World started a campaign for its return. They were successful, but the show returned without Robert Lindsay, who left for the hit BBC show Citizen Smith. His replacement, Carl Howman, just wasn't Jakey, and the show suffered as a result. Despite being popular enough to generate a campaign for its return, Get Some In is now largely forgotten, one viewer suggesting it just got lost in the crowd of 70s sitcoms. And as a fun footnote, a young Ray Winstone was hired as an extra but was fired for headbutting the director after being physically moved on set. Finally, we look at a single season wonder that almost nobody remembers. Well, anyway, this 1976 BBC Two sitcom starred and was written by the legendary satirical duo John Bird and John Fortune. The show was low-key and high concept. John Bird played John Daly, a photographer living in a scruffy little flat in Earl's Court. His world is turned upside down but when John Chance, played by Fortune, a smooth-talking, jet-setting con man, rings his doorbell and persuades him to share the flat. Fortune's character is a parasitical chancer who embroils Bird into a stream of crass money-making schemes. That sounds a bit like the plot for the forgotten BBC 1962 sitcom Hugh and I. One viewer recalled a surreal plot where Fortune persuades Daly to try and win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry by creating an artificial life form from odds and ends in the kitchen. Though it only ran for 7 episodes, viewers who caught it remember its unique atmosphere. Always wryly funny and occasionally quite surreal. It had a nice off-kilter atmosphere, not unlike Black Books or Nightingales. However, the contemporary reaction was muted. The programme wasn't particularly successful, which is why only a single season was made. It is now primarily remembered as part of Bird and Fortune's earlier work before their famous satirical interview sketches with Rory Bremner in the 1990s. The 1970s may have given us comedy gold, but it also produced a huge quantity of shows that were either too controversial, like Casanova 73, or too idiosyncratic, like Well Anyway. They are a testament to the fact that even brilliant writing and great acting can't always be guaranteed a spot in the history books. What was your favourite forgotten show from the 70s? Let me know in the comments, and coming up next we're moving into the era of big hair and even bigger shoulder pads to look at the forgotten sitcoms of the 1980s.